Hello, and welcome to the Project Good podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Hilton. Project Good is a social impact podcast interviewing experts and advocates about the pressing problems that we face globally and hearing how they suggest we move forward in the future. The Project Good podcast is brought to you by Project Good Work. The goal of this podcast is to inspire people and organizations to develop a mindset that can move others to positive action regarding the complex social issues facing people and the planet. For October, we have a special edition with Women's Empowerment International. In these times of growing economic uncertainty, everyone has been touched to some degree by change from rising food prices, unaffordable housing, and the changes in how we work. In places affected by extreme poverty, these issues have become even more pronounced. Tackling these issues takes a combination of social change, an increase in monetary access, and innovation. In addition, women in these areas are often the most vulnerable since many function as the bedrock of their communities, raising future generations and providing for their families. To move forward, it takes organizations like Women's Empowerment International, or WE, which is on a mission to empower women with tools to work their way out of poverty, care for their families, and strengthen their communities. WE envisions a world without poverty in which women are empowered, uplifted, and equal partners in society. Funding economic empowerment programs, including microfinance programs, small business development support, training, education, and other holistic poverty alleviation strategies, benefiting thousands of women experiencing poverty around the world. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Sarah Adams, Executive Director of Women Empowerment International, who is helping we empower women around the world. Let's get into the interview. First, let me introduce our guest, Sarah Adams, the Executive Director at Women Empowerment International, who has over 20 years' experience in the nonprofit sector with a proven track record of building strategies, partnerships, organization capacity building, fundraising, volunteer engagement, and program development. She has served in staff leadership positions on boards and is a consultant and trainer for organizations of all sizes, from small grassroots nonprofits to large national organizations. Before her time at WE, Ms. Adams was with Operation Homefront. She served as a senior regional director for field programs, overseeing the development, programs, events, and operations in a 5-state area. She's also been involved with several women's and girls' empowerment programs and brings that passion to WE. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. You did a great job of introducing me. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you on. And so I always have a question before we jump into the interview to get to know someone that I'm interviewing more. And so what, I guess, inspired you when I started looking at your background and everything to really look at jumping into nonprofit leadership, or I guess, why did you pick the career that you picked?
Gosh, that's a great question. I just really, I think, admired the work that was being done in the nonprofit sector. And that in general has become one of my passions, in addition to the individual missions of each organization I've worked for that I've cared so much about. It's just been about also strengthening our nonprofit sector as a whole, which is one of the reasons why it feels so great to be at WE is because it's focused on building that capacity with other organizations and being able to provide some funding to support the work that they're doing too.
Okay, fantastic. So I guess when you were, I know everybody when they're in their youth kind of, sometimes explores different options and things like that. So you just always felt that you had a heart for these types of things.
Absolutely. I think I always just had this idea of wanting to make the world a better place. When I was little, having that notion of I would hear about rainforests are being destroyed. I think that was one of the first causes I really remember caring about. And I was like, I'm going to save the rainforest. And so, it actually worked out. I think one of my first career paths was into the environmental world and doing conservation work, environmental education, and got a job. First, I worked with AmeriCorps, and then I got a job with an environmental nonprofit. And so was able to just continue that idea of what can I do to help make the world a better place. And then I got involved with volunteer engagement programs and saw this great opportunity to help other people get involved in projects that they cared about, causes that they cared about, and helping them find a path to helping to support the community. And that, that notion of making it a better community and the type of place that they want to live in. And, I saw that sort of as my path of like, how can I make this community the place that, is going to be the best for everybody here. And, now I think about how can I make our world a better place for my girls and, my daughters, and what kind of world am I helping to create for them that they're growing up in?
Yes, and that's a perfect lead-in, actually, to talk about Women Empowered International, because a lot of times people don't know, or they are always surprised to find out that in the global population of male to females, that it is almost a 50-50 split. And so that's, that's serious and big news to know, because 50% of the population are not, getting the opportunities or having access or getting to utilize their full potential. It affects, all of us. And so, well, let's learn, I guess, about what and who Women Empowerment International is. So I'll let you introduce them.
Okay, well, you did a great job of talking about the mission of Women's Empowerment International, or we, as we call it, like you noted, and what our vision is, what our mission is, and the work that we're doing. So we are kind of like, I like to describe it as either a large giving circle or a small foundation. We are primarily a fundraising and grant making organization. So we are raising money to give grants to other nonprofits, our partners, our grant partners here in San Diego and then around the world.
Now, there are, one of the things we had an interview with Philanthropy together, and they had introduced us to the idea of giving circles and groups of not only just always women, of course, but different giving circles around the world that come together to support different causes and missions, making a difference in a different way than the large global foundations that may not always give funding to maybe sometimes a neighborhood cause, or focus on things like Women Empowerment International does on focusing on women. And so you mentioned that you take kind of a holistic look, and you are not just, of course, an organization that is just, just giving out funding, but you work with actually other organizations. So what, I guess, how is your organization, differently set up than, your traditional foundations?
Good question. Well, we are registered as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are not a community or private foundation, so we don't have the same guidelines that they might need to follow. We have primarily individual donors, but in some cases, we have also received small grants from other organizations. So we can bring in donations from individuals, from corporations, from foundations, from community associations, pretty much from anywhere. And then our membership and our board decide where that money is going to go and how we're going to award that money. And we choose to do it in the form of grants rather than in a straight donation. The money is specified as to where it's going to go from the organizations that are applying for the grant. But sort of within that, we have a lot of trust in them, and it's really up to them to tell us, how they will best use that money around their economic empowerment programs for women.
I love that. You actually touched on an issue that is a big time issue, I think, in the world of philanthropy, is that a lot of times, a lot of organizations, they have, I'm just making up numbers, but they might say, okay, $20,000 will be for a new computer lab. 30,000 we're going to do for, they need a activity room. And so on. But I like the fact that Women Empowerment International, it's kind of in the name, that you empower the organization to use the funding how they need, and you trust them. This is actually something that we touched on in a previous episode, is that having the ability, or what makes a turn or a new change that needs to be made in the world of philanthropy, is having the organizations have that trust that they know where they need the funding. And so have you found that taking that approach has made, I guess, a greater impact?
Definitely. Well, I think that concept, the trust-based philanthropy, is really important. And I think it was great to see during the pandemic that more and more organizations were taking that approach, I think, because everything was changing and evolving. And if you're not trusting the organizations that you're giving that donation to or that grant to, then why are you giving them the money? You're not giving them the money to say, here's how you should run your programs. But we take the approach of, these organizations know best how to use that money and how to run those programs. That's why we're supporting them, is because they know what their community needs. They know what the women in their community needs and the families in their communities need. They're based in the communities. And so they're going to tell us all about the great work that they're doing that's being directed by their communities, and then make the biggest impact with the donation that we give them.
Yes. And then one of the other things, of course, is that not only are you doing, supporting local organizations, but you are having an international reach. And so how has your organization, from, its roots here in the U.S. to abroad, really incorporated diversity into your philanthropic efforts?
I'm sorry, Amber, can you repeat that one more time?
Oh, no worries. I was saying, how are you one of and perhaps it was how I phrased the question. I was getting into the diversity element that you have included in philanthropy, and one of the reasons that I'm bringing that up is a lot of times people don't realize that a lot of the funding isn't necessarily widely distributed. And so that is a reason sometimes that we continuously see the same global problems and issues continue to either get bigger or not get better. And so one of the things that I do know about the organization is that you have a diversity component that is different maybe than a lot of organizations. And so maybe touch on the area of all the different countries and regions that you touch on as an organization.
Okay, so we try to have an array of grant partners that we're supporting both geographically and then in focus of their programming. And so one of the things that we believe right now as an organization is that there's not just one thing that's going to solve global poverty, right? That it is such a big issue and it looks different in each region. In some cases, there are unique challenges that are faced by people living there, and then by the organizations that are working there. And so there's not one thing that we can say we only fund this thing. But that's, again, listening to our potential grant partners say, this is the need in the community, this is how we're addressing it, and this is what our program looks like. So we started the organization funding microfinance programs. And that was a great place to start. And then as time went on and as our organization grew and started to change, we look to expand that past just microfinance programs. And so we do still fund some microfinance programs, but then we also fund other types of programs, small business development, training and coaching, for example, or education programs, job training programs, skill building programs, and other things that just help to break barriers that are present for women and the economic opportunities that they should be having access to. And then we do try to look for partners in different geographic areas that may be based on where we're seeing a certain need arise in the world, or where we are seeing our donors are caring about, because we always want to be responsive and listening to our donors as well, and how their donations are distributed. And then we may hear from organizations that we didn't know about before approach us and tell us about the great work they're doing, and seeing the impact that makes, and being able to provide some funding for them.
So you bring up a excellent point that you have, how you find that balance between the donors, where the funding needs to go, and of course, letting the organizations that get the funding, distribute it as they need. So when you are, I guess, when you do get approached by sometimes new donors or prospective donors, or people who want to, fund different things, what are some of the things that you, and I'm doing this more to, for a global understanding for funders, like some things that they should look for, or the questions that are, that funders should be asking, I guess, organizations, so that they know that they are making an impact. So when you are approached by new people who call you up or send an email and say, hey, I want to fund this because blah, blah, blah. I guess what should a funder look for when they are, I'm kind of turning the tables. What should they look for when they are scoping out organizations that they want to help, and how, I guess, how do you approach that when new people come to you say, oh, I want to fund? Do you just, say, okay, great. Or how do you, how do you guide them to what's the right program for them to be part of?
Right. Well, it's definitely a balance, like you said, right? Because sometimes you could have a donor who says, I want to fund X, and it is not in alignment with our current funding criteria. And so, we have to be honest with them and say, well, that's a great thing to fund, but that's not where Women's Empowerment International is focusing our efforts. So we have a defined list of funding criteria that we've developed with our board and our members and their input, but it's something that we can go back to. And sometimes we need to adapt it and add things in as we see things happening in the world, or we see, our priorities are changing, or we're adapting to the needs of, the organizations that are seeking funding. But it's something that we can go to kind of keep us in alignment with our mission. And then also be able to communicate that with our donors too, if maybe they're not completely in alignment with the focus of our organization. Maybe there's a better or a different organization that their donation is a better fit for, I should say. And then in terms of, the organizations that we're looking at potentially funding when we're doing a search, especially for new partners, or when maybe a current partner is changing the way that they do their programming, we can still look at these funding criteria and say, is this in alignment? Does this meet our criteria for our donor dollars and our grants?
I like that, the fact that you, you really kind of give them the path that your organization is on, and then, finding that alignment. I think it's important because one of the things that I think that that a lot of people sometimes miss is it's not just about the money, right? And what I mean by that, yes, we know that we need money to build things and buy things, but in order to make the actual change that you're trying to do in a lot of these communities, it requires that not only the actual, dollars are directed to whatever activity or thing that needs to change, but that the purpose behind it being the people who are giving the money are really invested for that change. And if they are, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that if they are in that whole alignment, that they tend to continue to fund over years because they see that, okay, my goal is, I'm just making this one up, but, my goal is to, take this first generation of girls from, I don't know, age 5 to 18 and get them all to be, in college or something like that. And I realized that that's not going to happen, but just funding one time, because obviously, it takes years for girls to grow up, right?
Right.
So this is my thoughts, I guess. Talk about, funders, alignment, and making sure that all goes together in order to really make an impact.
Yeah. Well, I guess for us, we approach our relationship with our grantees as a partnership. And that's something that I think is really special about we, is that is the outlook. And it isn't just, we're going to approve this grant, but we are going to enter into a partnership. And I think that's a big part of our criteria. And maybe it's different from other funders, right? That we are not just looking at where do the grantees, the partners, programs line up with what we're looking to fund, but also, are they going to be able to tell us about the impact of the organization? And we don't want to burden them with too many reporting criteria or, too many check-ins or, anything like that. But, can they be able to send us stories about the women participating in their programs? Can they send us a progress report mid-year? Will they share with us when they have events? So we can be a part of that. So we can, tell our members about that. Can we share information about their organization with our members? And so that communication is a key criteria for us too. And it isn't maybe a fit for every organization that might get funding or might be seeking funding, right? They might say, we don't have the capacity to provide any kind of stories back to you or any kind of reporting. And then, okay, maybe that's not the partnership we're looking for. But, here we want to be open to about, well, here's what support we can offer your organization, because we want it to be a win-win kind of partnership. So what are some other things that we can do? Can we help you with evaluation and data collection with our team of volunteers? And what could that look like? Is that some support that they might appreciate or need or find helpful? And, what are those other things that aren't just strictly, the program needs to do X, Y, and Z, but can make us feel comfortable about that partnership and for them to feel comfortable about entering into a partnership with us as a funder. One of the other things is our members and donors having some sort of access to the organizations too and their leadership. And so that isn't that all of our members are individually calling them, but, can they have a representative do a partner presentation via Zoom for our members and getting some kind of updates in that way? What are some things like that we can do that makes it be a good partnership?
And you're touching on something I think that is often missed, and it could be, it depends each time, of course, on the size of the organization, and I guess to some aspects, but I'm going to lean that it's probably less, about, what the thing that they're funding, but you bring in the part of that philanthropy and being a funder and being, really, I guess, a change agent takes action. And that, I think, is something that is maybe different than what was done in, decades or generations past. It was just like, okay, here, I give you the money, you take care of it. But we see that it now requires, or I believe it always did, we just didn't maybe, dive into it because we just thought, somebody else will take care of it. But now that we see that we are, I guess, are we close to almost 8 billion, or did we pass it? Or I don't know. I forgot what the last, how many people are now on this crazy planet. But with so many people that are here, that you can't just I guess, quote unquote, pass the buck anymore, because there's too many things going on. And so you now have to step in if you really want to, have the money that you are giving to organizations to make a difference. And then also wanting to see these impacts, that you can't just be somebody that's just, sitting back, that you, just like you said, you have to look at, is this really, are you aligned to it? And if you are, you have to realize that, you just don't fund once. It's a long-term thing, because these problems aren't going to just, evaporate through one-time giving. And so I just wanted to bring that up, because that is, on this theme that we're talking about, that modern philanthropy is more than just, throwing some money at it these days. It takes thinking, planning, and I guess a little bit, I'm going to go as far as to say maybe self-awareness of, of what you're lining yourself with. And I guess to get out of going to the deep end, I want to talk about a little bit more about how people can get involved with Women Empowerment International. I guess, what are the different ways? Obviously, they can donate and provide funding, but what other opportunities do people have?
Right. Well, to get involved, definitely, like you said, donate, right, is a big one. And we have to say that, because we're a fundraising grant making organization. We can't do that without donations, but attend an event. That's another thing you can do, right? Some of our events are fundraisers and some of them are educational opportunities. And I think, like you said about being sort of a modern philanthropist or a modern change maker, you have to be on a quest, I think, to learn and to understand what's happening in the world. And we want to learn and understand what's happening with the organizations that we're supporting, and what are the real challenges that people are facing in their communities, and the women specifically are facing in their communities, and what else are they providing, or what other challenges are they facing aside from just the economic piece, right? And the economic empowerment piece. And so we as an organization, I think, are trying to do more and offer more of those opportunities for our members and just for the community in general, because that's a linkage that I think that we can provide, and a role that we can play, and that we sort of have we have a responsibility to play that for the community. And so that's something where we need to continue to grow as an organization, and we'll try to focus more on that. But those events are open to anybody to get involved and learn more. We have volunteer opportunities. We always need help with admin type of stuff. We have committees that focus on marketing and fundraising and event planning, a little bit of something for everybody that people can join. We also have volunteers who act as our partner liaisons. And so that's a really special kind of role for a volunteer, who gets to be the main point of contact between our organization and one of our grant partners. They get to really get to know that organization and the staff there. And so that helps to build the trust, I think, for both ways, between our organization and between the grant partner. And it seems to be a role that's really appreciated by everyone. So they become, like I said, that point of contact, but then they also become a really great advocate for the organization, both when it comes time for maybe renewing funding, but then also for just promoting what the organization is doing to our members and ways that our members can continue to make a difference in the community around the issues that the organization's addressing. So those are some of the ways, and we're always open to other ideas and ways that people can, think about how they can get involved and how they can contribute.
Yes, and I know, there's lots of opportunities, and I know each year you guys have a big fundraiser called Empowered We Rise,
Yes.
that you host as well. So yes. So definitely that is also an event to always keep in mind as well for people who like to get out and do mixers and.
Absolutely. Yes. And people can find our volunteer opportunities, our contact information, our event calendar, all at our website, womenempowerment.org. Our events, we are always looking for sponsors too, whether that's an individual or a business or businesses that are maybe able to offer in-kind donations for our events to help everything run smoothly and, have more fundraising opportunities. So there's lots of different ways to get involved.
Yes. And so let me see here. I did have a couple other questions before we close. I always get a couple global perspective kind of questions. If you were going to describe, I guess, what should be the modern face of philanthropy? I know it's like I always call these my beauty pageant questions.
Gosh, I should have been prepared for that one. I don't know, and I saw that question on the list, but I find it really hard to answer because I don't know that there should be a face for modern philanthropy, and maybe that's something that is continuing to change and evolve, and something that needs to continue to change and evolve because I think. Maybe even, I don't know, a year ago, if you said the word philanthropist, I think everybody would have a certain image of what that looks like in their mind. And we shouldn't have that, right? Philanthropy should be available to anyone in the community. It should feel accessible. It should be an inclusive community. It shouldn't have just one face. It should be everybody involved, working together, being a part of it from both the funder side, from the fundee side, from organizations on all sides of the sector, but then everybody within the community should be a part of that too and have access to that and feel like that's an inclusive environment to be in.
I think that's a beautiful answer. Having the face of philanthropy can be anyone. I think that's a perfect answer, especially where we are, positioned right now on the planet and with so many things that unfold, I guess, literally each week. So yes, I think that's a perfect answer. Now, to wrap things up, when looking at the word, and I'm just going to go a little bit of a deep dive, but I think it will complete kind of everything that you are working towards as an organization. Is what would you say if we are looking at the word women empowerment? What does that really mean? What is women empowerment? What does it mean to you?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. I think it means so many different things that it is hard to say concisely. What does that really mean? I think when I first hear the phrase, if I were to just hear the phrase women's empowerment, I would think first of that place of confidence, and really being able to step into that and owning that and feeling like anything is attainable, right? That I have access to the opportunities just the same as anyone of any gender, right? That's kind of irrelevant, right? That there is some equity in that there is just this access to opportunities and that confidence to take that and run with it. But then with our organization, we also have, the focus on economic empowerment, which goes along with that, right? Because that's a big part of it. And I think as you and I have talked about in the past, right, money talks, right? And there's a power in having access to money, having the ability to buy, to spend, to own wealth, right? And just what kind of voice that gives you in society. But then not just in society or in our communities, but then also in our homes. And what kind of voice does that give you in your home in terms of decision making and just the ability to build the life that you want to build, whatever that looks like for you. And there's that empowerment piece without focus on the financial side of it. And so I think there's just so many things. And I love that also other people can come to our organization and feel a different part of that too, and have a slightly different meaning. But I think one thing that I really appreciate about our organization and our members is that we're not going around saying, oh, we are going to empower people, but there's a belief that people already should be empowered. And just there's often, I think too many times there's some sort of barrier to being able to really just run with that empowerment or stepping into that empowerment. And so we're not saying, oh, we're going to empower you, but we're going to knock down some barriers for you. We're going to make sure you have access to opportunities. And that's really what we want to create, because then, people know what they want to do with that, and they know the path they want their life to take. And it's just making sure then again, that they've got that access, they've got the opportunity, they've got the resources they need to do that and create that for themselves, for their families, for their communities.
I think that is, all encompassing. I think of, the role, I guess, it covers the role of women in society. And then also, as I said at the beginning, it is 50% of the population. So it's not just, it affects us all very strongly. So I love your answer.
Right.
Yes. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, and I think that reminds me too, you saying like, oh, they're 50%. And I think that's the part of our vision statement that I love, that says, that we envision a world in which women are uplifted and equal partners in society. That's what we're after. And just that everybody has a voice.
Yes. Yeah. Because if you have one broken leg when there's only two, it really makes it hard to walk. Yes.
Right. Well, and I've seen some statistics that, that say stuff like, oh, well, when you give opportunities to women, or when they're able to, enter the workforce, or they're able to, to build their businesses and all of these things, that then, the country's GDP will be doubled. And it's like, well, yes, because they're half of society. But then I think you sort of, some people forget just what an impact that has, right? And just how much all of these barriers and restraints are preventing a collective good from being achieved.
Yes. And I couldn't have said it any better. Thank you, Sarah, for your time and insight. If you'd like to learn more about Sarah Adams and Women Empowerment International, go to womenempowerment.org. If you have a passion for an unserved community, a social justice problem, or simply want to change minds, contact Project Good Work at projectgood.work to start your project of change today. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Project Good, where we're focused on what matters.